Who would have thought by episode 14 Mash would more or less be married? I mean, sure, Lemon's pretty much been hustling for Mash since, well, literally the very start. But the fact that she can pretty much meet her father in law, and boy howdy, did she meet her father in law. This man went from thinking Mash wasn't going to survive this school to Mash is never going to have friends. He's just too out of pocket, and obviously a very parental worry, worrying that your son doesn't fit into a world. It's wholesome, it's emotional, but like, whether it's he's already has a rival, he has a siscon friend, and goddamn, this woman pops up saying, "Don't worry, father-in-law, we haven't even held hands yet, but I am gonna marry your boy." That's how you know you have a great episode of Mashle on your hands. Full live reaction to today's wonderful episode over on my Patreon. If you would like to see that, it's over there if you're interested. So Mash got into a bit of a sticky predicament last week, and by the end of it, it's hard to say if he's got out of it or is just in it in a more comfortable way, because ultimately he had some backup, he had some reinforcements, and honestly he had as best of reinforcements as you could get, literally. So you have the headmaster come in, pretty much he knew he was going to protect our boy. Reigns, he pops up too, just being like, listen, I'm pretty much homies with this boy at this point. But you have to also remember that even if we've seen Mash and what he's done, not only is there rules and basically a cultural impact of anyone who's talentless, who can't use magic, it's been a whole thing. It's like this pure discrimination, kind of like prejudice vibes against people like Mash, that isn't going to change overnight. So even if someone very powerful and respected like the headmaster says something, doesn't mean they're gonna go just be like, okay, sure boss, whatever you say. The only reason that Mash was actually able to get out of that situation was the person who was sentenced to give the sentencing deferred the trial and kind of like the verdict for a bit more. And even then, it wasn't like it made everyone happy, they just had to respect that choice while also putting new rules. So Mash already pretty much had the whole thing of like, hey, by the end of the school year, you gotta become number one, and now he has to go through and become the visionary for this year, and that's gonna be happening sooner rather than later. And I really liked what they did because it didn't feel like anything conveniently happened while still staying true to that kind of slapstick comedy charm that Mashle is known for. Mash didn't do a whole lot of like craziness in the moment, but I think the way he got out of the situation, because of all the connections he's built at this point, the headmaster realizing that, well, listen, like, I've seen this boy go through and already start to change the perception of how people like him are treated. Obviously, there is personal bias there, and he even admits as such. But the fact that he can go out of his way and say that if we let someone like Mash continue, the way of our world is going to change, that people will start seeing people like Mash a lot differently because everything he's done is without magic. But that is breaking the rules. They're not just going to let that slide. So it's very interesting to see the entire reason, even after two people bowing and begging, the entire reason he got out of that exact situation was because, well, the person who was responsible for his trial said, he saved my life, I'm not going to hurt this kid just yet. And two, this is the first time that Innocent Zero has ever really targeted someone or made like a move like this, so we can use him in order to basically figure out where they are, sort of a thing. And honestly, they did a really smart job at not making it a joke or like any particular person the butt of a joke, but instead write it in a way that's like, okay, that actually makes sense for what's going on with Mashle. And then they actually just had a lot of fun with the remaining chunk of the episode. We go wand shopping, and honestly, I wasn't sure what Mash was going to do, because at this point, does he even need a wand? Like, the school is pretty much going to know at this point, but the general public on the outside, of course, doesn't. The fact that there's like this cursed wand that was placed there that's like stopping this giant leak, and honestly, the fact that they all had collectively the same reaction, like, you shouldn't have told him that only like the strongest of the strong can more or less do it, because he rips that bad boy up. And honestly, for having your shop flooded, I've never seen a more thank you daddy moment than just that. But it was fun, it was wholesome, it had a little bit of spice, but it's doing something a little different than what we saw in the first core. I think if you look at both episodes 13 and 14 of that Mashle greatness, we're kind of on a new trajectory for this show, and it's going to be very fun to see where they take it, because we have a hefty cast of supporting characters now. We have our main crew, we have characters like Lance, Lemon, Dodd. I mean, our boy Finn, man, he's probably the best one of the bunch at this point. I was not expecting him to relate to Gramps being like, bro, they're all just idiots. And the fact that he's like, you probably have the hardest time out of all of them. And he's like, yep, don't you know it? Can I be the son-in-law actually? Because this shit's just too much. I need a support, man. Just funny stuff. But I like the fact that when the three people are like flying on their brooms, it looks like they're going through that forest from the first season of Attack on Titan. We just have basically the gate of Babylon open up and all those swords drop down. Our boy was not letting Mash get jumped, and honestly, I hope he wins. I assume he can, but at the same time, I mean, this is kind of in unpredictable territory as it stands. The best part about Mashle is that it can simultaneously be the most ridiculous, over-the-top, did he actually just do the show, while simultaneously telling a pretty fun Magic Academy story, because at the end of the day, there is a system and a set of beliefs that is ingrained into pretty much every single person. There's a reason why Mash's adoptive father was like, hey, I can't let you have friends and just interact with too many people because you'll literally get killed if you're discovered. But two, he is such an outcast, both in terms of his personality, but the fact that he doesn't have magic. So it's a pretty hard thing to see something like that, especially with a character who very much is kind-hearted. He's ridiculous. He's eating cream puffs the size of, I don't know, like 3 basketballs? It's hard to say exactly, but it's a ridiculously big bad boy. And the fact that he can just like casually do his workouts with his friend in a giant suit of armor. It's so out of pocket, but it's simultaneously showing some great character growth along the way. Because there's only so much that you can do with a show like Mashle if it is just a pure comedy. Like if it's just, how is Mash going to do something that isn't magic but make it look like muscle magic? That's funny for so long, but if you're going into now, up to episode 24 at least, we need to do something more, and they are actually fleshing out the characters while simultaneously still having those funny quirks. We have a boy who literally has an animated magical shirt of his sister. That is stupid. That is out of pocket. But his actual character is more than just that ridiculous, whatever you want to call that siscon trope, right? And that's what the show does such a great job at. Mashle feels just as consistent as it was in the first core, so if you like how it looked in the first 12 episodes, I feel like no one's really going to have an issue with how it's looking so far with the next 12 episodes. The music remains to be awesome. I love the R&B style. I just love how much it gets you bobbing and weaving. I still think it has one of my favorite openings of this anime season. The voice actors continuing to knock it out of the park, and honestly, it's nice to have a group of homies that are actually trying to support MASH while simultaneously having a group oppose MASH in a pretty realistic way given their environment. And like the headmaster says, if anyone's going to change the tune of the masses, it's going to be someone like MASH, but it's not just going to be plot convenience that everyone says, okay, Mr. Dumbledore over here says so. No, they have rules to follow and rules need to be obeyed, as any order does, right? But overall, I leave this episode quite satisfied. I think the return last week, episode 13, is probably my favorite out of the two, but this episode was definitely needed, very important. Gets the ball moving with the plot, the character interactions are fantastic, and honestly, Lemon steals the show with, hello, my father-in-law, I'm your daughter-in-law now. Let's shake hands, and don't worry, I'll only touch his hand on the wedding night. And I'm like, how can you simultaneously be so innocent and so degenerate all mixed into one? I don't know, but I love you for it. Let me know your feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell so you can get notified when I upload more of the channel, and like I mentioned, we have a full live reaction over on my Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, you also get a video shout out. Alright, so today we have Edvar, Golden Angel, 1517, Alcerin, Rhinon, and Thrilled Axis 709. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.